there, and thank you once again for joining us on our second Investor Session webinar. Before I get into the topics of the second Investor Session webinar, I'd like to talk about just go over and recap briefly what we talked about in the first Investor Session webinar. First of all, we discussed the basics of what is the Riviera Maya and where is it. We looked at a map with all the different towns and cities involved in the Riviera Maya. Playa del Carmen, of course, is the heart of the Riviera Maya, where we are right now. We talked about the importance of working with a licensed agent, a licensed real estate agent in the state of Quintana Roo. Beyond that, we mentioned that it is important to know the agency and the people who will represent you. Why? Because the laws are different, the language is different, the customs and the people are different. So you want to know a little bit of something, a history and the qualifications of the people you're working with. And you met each one of my team individually. I hope you were won over by their shining personalities. We also talked about our investor process, what we do for you. And that starts with an initial email or phone call, moves quickly into more information, online property searches, some of the questions that we like to cover that help us look for the right properties for you. And then, this moves quickly to knowledge of the areas, the benefits, the relative price points, individual property visitations, and an offer, and the contract purchase. We talked a lot about the differences in US and Canada versus here. We also touched on owning real estate in a bank trust for foreigners. That is our jumping off point for today. We will be discussing in detail the concept of the bank trust or the fideicomiso for foreigners, also the idea of corporate ownership, Mexican corporate ownership of property. And those will be our topics for today. If we have time, we will also discuss the concept of purchasing pre-construction real estate or properties that are on resale. And we will talk about those in depth if there's time. I like to keep this to about 18 minutes because then right after we have a live question and answer time. And so if there's not time in this email, we will cover pre-construction resale in subsequent webinars. And also in subsequent webinars, we will cover the topic of the closing process, very important. The difference between lawyers and notarios here versus your home country, wherever home is, and also the closing costs. Those are really interesting and important topics because any investor needs to know all those facts before making any purchase. And of course, we'll be talking about what happens after the close, the rental, the cost of ownership, rental for income, that kind of thing. So hope you join us for the coming webinars. And stay tuned after I'm done talking because we will be going into a live question and answer period. So on to the really detailed fideicomiso history, what is it, why is it, how it works, and then into corporate ownership. So have your pens ready, take notes, and then we'll go. Okay, so Mexico has a long history of foreign invasion, starting with the Spanish, followed by the French and the US. There's been a trail of loss of land and takeover and other mysteries suffered by the people of Mexico. That's a fact. So as a result of such a history of invasion and to prevent future invasion and hostile takeover and land loss, Mexico changed the Mexican Constitution. In 1917, the Mexico Constitution banned foreign ownership of land within the restricted zone. Let's look at the restricted zone. What is that? You've probably heard a lot about that. There's a lot of misconceptions about what it means as a foreigner to own land in Mexico, and the whole point of today is to clear that up. So the restricted zone has been named as 50 kilometers of our coasts and 100 kilometers from the border. That is the restricted zone where foreigners in 1917 were banned from owning real estate to prevent hostile takeover and land loss. Why is that? Because land and sea are the obvious points of entry back in 1917, air travel, not so much. So that's why they banned it in those areas. However, in subsequent years, there was a resurgence in interest of foreign investment. Mexico responded to this interest in foreign investment because in the not too distant past, foreign investors wanted to invest in the beauty of Mexico. That's why we're here. And foreign investment for Mexico could be a good thing. So rather than change the whole constitution, which for any country could be a problem, foreign investment law was approved by President Luis Echeverria in 1971. It became law in 1973, not too distant in the past. So that's when foreigners could invest in our country in the restricted zone. In 1989, the Mexican government signed into law the ability for foreigners to have a bank trust. And it signed into law the ability for that bank trust to have successive extensions. So basically, between 1971, 1973, and 1989, the law banning foreigners was amended several times to now its current state, where foreigners can own land in this restricted zone, the most desirable parts of Mexico, the borders and the beaches, in a fideicomiso, a bank trust. That's what all this law was about. So what is a bank trust? What is a fideicomiso? The bank trust for real estate in Mexico is known as a fideicomiso. It is the way that foreigners can own real estate in this restricted zone, which, as we said before, are the most desirable areas typically. In a bank trust, there is a deed, and it is held in the bank trust. It's held under your name with the bank. The bank acts as a fiduciary of the trust. You and your heirs are the beneficiary of said trust, fideicomiso. What are the benefits of a bank trust? The beneficiary, you, have absolute control over the property. Let me just say it another way. You have all the rights and the obligations of ownership. It's yours. You can live in it, you can sell it, you can rent it, you can build on it, you can, did I say will it already? You can will it, you can sell it, it's yours. You do what you want. You also are responsible for paying, property taxes and maintaining it within all the, legal, laws, all the legal restrictions of your area, wherever you may be. An important consideration is that a bank trust is not considered part of the bank assets. So that's important, and it's also a comfort, because if the bank, happens to go bankrupt, we've certainly heard of that in the US, why not here in Mexico? What happens? It just simply transmits over to another bank. We have had in recent years a bank take over, a small bank called Interacciones, which was dedicated solely to bank trusts for foreigners, got bought out by a bigger bank called Banorte, which is the national bank. And all those trusts that were with Interacciones simply got transported over to Banorte, and they have the same level of service, the same notification, everything managed at Banorte without a hiccup. So that's an important fact to put your mind at rest. The term of a 50-year bank trust can be extended, can be renewed, ongoing. So at the end of 50 years, your deed does not disappear. You just, through an application process and a fee, pay for another 50-year bank trust. The other really important benefit of the trust is that the trust names substitute beneficiaries. So you, as the owner, are considered the primary beneficiary. Let's say, by some unfortunate circumstance, you pass away sooner. than you expect, but you name already in your trust substitute beneficiaries. Could be your children, could be your aunts, your uncles, your stepmother, whoever you like, gets named as a substitute beneficiary right in the bank trust, so that when you pass away, that bank trust automatically transmits to the substitute beneficiary. What does that really mean? It means that although it's always a good idea to have a will, it's not required, because the bank trust does not have to go through probate. And imagine what it's just a peace of mind, because imagine in times of sadness and loss and other legalities of, having to process the loss of life of another individual, you don't have to deal with a foreign property in Mexico. It's already dealt with when you buy and you put it in a bank trust. So that is the benefits of the bank trust. I just want to talk to you in detail about who are the parts of the bank trust. There's something called the trust settler. That's the trustor, and that is the owner of the property before it goes to you. You are the trustee. The trustee is the government-approved financial institution, the bank, who will hold the trust for the designated time. And you are the beneficiaries, which is the foreigner acting as the beneficiary to the trust with the rights for use and benefits of the property and all the obligations also. We get a lot of questions about what are the concerns of the bank trust. What if a bank trust, as discussed earlier, what if the bank trust goes bankrupt? Well, the fideicomiso is transferred to another bank and serviced at that bank. It's not an asset of the bank. Mexico cannot directly or indirectly expropriate property that has a deed in a bank trust. In the case of where it's needed, the land or the land might be needed for public works, such as a road or a train, like the Maya train or something like that, fair settlement is paid. And I happen to know, when I was a licensed real estate agent in British Columbia, Canada, that such was true in British Columbia. If you owned land and the government needed your land for public works, like a dam or a road, you were paid fair market value for that property. And so it is here too. Everything I'm talking about it pertains to deeded property. We get a lot of questions, a lot of concerns. Someone might say, I heard that land can be taken from a foreigner. If it has a deed and that deed is in a fideicomiso, that property cannot be taken from you. The questions that people have about that is because maybe they have mistakenly got involved in something called ejido land, which is land that was designated for the Mexicans to live and work and earn their living in and share, much like a co-op. And it was never intended to be, subdivided and sold to foreigners, because there's no deed. So as long as you have deeded property, and here at Living Riviera Maya, we only sell property with title, okay? So be rest assured about that. Now, we also want to get into the topic of purchasing property in a Mexican corporation. And the Mexican corporation comes with it, as with anything, some benefits and concerns. Let's talk when and how should you, purchase real estate in a Mexican corporation. There's a lot of questions about that these days. When you are purchasing real estate for commercial purposes, such as a hotel or a commercial space for a store, anything that is a business with the intent to earn a source of revenue is considered a good reason to purchase. Well, the only way you should purchase is in a Mexican corporation, not in a fideicomiso. The law prohibits, actually, I'm not a lawyer, I'm just telling you what I know, and we certainly, set you up with meetings with our vetted lawyers, so you get more detail about this. But I just want to let you know that the law prohibits purchasing residential property, a home, a condo, through a corporation. The whole point of the corporation is that it's for commercial purposes, and a condo with the intent of putting it on Airbnb is not a commercial purpose. That's a personal purpose where you choose to rent out your residence. We can always look to the zoning of the, of the property, which can help clarify. Examples of exceptions of such examples that you're exempt from this law if you're purchasing multiple properties for investment purposes only. Example, you want to buy 20 one-bedroom condos, you never will live in them, you're going to own them in a Mexican corporation with the intent of only renting them out. Then, yes, not just one, but multiple properties. Or if you want to open a bed and breakfast, it's still a home, it's a residential property, but you're running a business inside the home, then yes, you can have that in a Mexican corporation also. Those are some exemptions. So what are the advantages of purchasing in a corporation? Well, some people feel more secure that they can avoid the bank trust and go straight to a title, an escritura, as it's called here in Mexico. Some people feel that's an advantage. There's no bank trust. When you sell, another advantage is that when you sell, you can sell your corporation. The title remains, the deed, the property remains in the corporation, and you just sell the corporation. So that means, it's faster and cheaper to sell, and the buyer saves money because they're not paying closing costs on the property. They're just doing like a corporate transfer of name to them. Here's one that I really like, is that you can initiate a corporation, and that corporation can be the entity that hires you and gives you the working visa here in Mexico. It's not a bad way to go if that's what you want to do. Now, there are some considerations to purchasing a property in a corporation. And it is one thing that's not really made clear up front. There's a lot of people we know that buy residential properties in a corporation, but what's not really made clear at the beginning is that it's more expensive to set up and maintain a corporation than a trust. To set up a Mexican corporation with the intent to hold property of a commercial purpose, it costs approximately $2,000 to set up the corporation, and then you're required by Mexican law you pay about $200 a month for an accountant to file taxes for you each month. As a corporation, you must be active in recording income and expenses, and therefore hire an accountant to file taxes monthly and yearly. Yes, here in Mexico, a corporation has the obligation to file 13 tax reports a year, one per month and one big one per year. So you have to have an accountant to do that. You can't do it yourself. This is not, homefiling.com as you might experience in the US. So a corporation has a tax ID, its own tax ID, not your own personal ID, but the corporation has its own tax ID, and you are responsible to Hacienda, which is the same as the IRS in Canada or Revenue Canada. Sorry, the IRS in the US or Revenue Canada in Canada. So a corporation must be included in your will. Unlike a fideicomiso, that you do not have to have a will, you do not have to include it in your will. It is not part of the probate of your will. The fideicomiso automatically transfers to your beneficiaries, your sub-beneficiaries. A corporation must be included in your will. So you need to have also a will in Mexico if you are a Mexico corporate owner. In any Mexican corporation, there has to be a minimum of 2 socios. That's 2 people in the company must be named. And guess what? They don't have to be Mexican, so that's kind of nice. If you want to, here's one that is really for consideration. It's easy to get into a corporation, but think about getting out. the pool of interested and willing buyers might be smaller, because a buyer of a corporation is responsible for any debt of the past that the corporation has acquired. Checking the history of a Mexican corporation and all its activities and all its debts is not the easiest thing. So once that's realized, the people who want to purchase a property, a residential property that's in a corporation, becomes fewer. You know, the other alternative to that is you liquidate your property out of the corporation, and then you pay your corporate taxes and sell just the property. It's a little bit more of a step, but if you just want to sell the corporation because you want it to be easy and quick for you, the buyers, once they get good legal advice, often realize, wow, I'm responsible for all the past activity of that corporation, which may or may not be disclosed at the time of purchase. So those are some considerations, and we can talk about those more in the questions and answer period. And so for now, I guess I'm pretty close to the time limit. I try to keep it to 20 minutes in respect of your time. So what I'd like to do is, for the next investor session, I would like to bring into light the buying a resale property, something built, already turnkey, here's your key, or pre-construction properties. Our area has been, inundated. That's actually how our area has grown so much. It's all been pre-construction and a few resales. Now there's more and more resales on the market. Let's talk about that in next investor session webinar, along with the legalities of purchasing, the roles of lawyers, notaries, how they're different, in your home country versus here. And we'll also talk about renting and the cost of ownership, the cost of closing, all of those things in our next investor session webinars, which I hope you'll join us for. And for now, let's just go to some questions. If anybody has a question, you can unmute yourself and ask, or you can type a question in the chat, which is down at the bottom there. You should see it down at the bottom, and we will do our best to answer it. If you're ready also for something more personalized and you want to have a personal meeting with one of myself or my agents, then we are certainly ready and available to talk to you. Just send us an email at info@livingrivieramaya.com. A US phone number, 760-994-1716. And info@livingrivieramaya.com. Thanks.